Welcome back to the Layman's Law School, where two hillbilly lawyers and a special guest actually discuss the legal issues of the day and try to educate you a little bit about the law.
I didn't know that Whitney was a lawyer.
I said
Two hillbilly lawyers and a special guest.
Yeah, you are a hillbilly.
Okay. Oh, well, I mean,
you're from Thompson, Georgia. I think I qualify.
No, my friend from Raven County would disagree. I'm a flatlander, not a hillbilly.
Okay, all right. Well, a large portion of my family is named after a mountain in North Georgia, so I cannot get away from the moniker. Yeah. So, and my great granddad, ran moonshine stills and all that, but
yeah,
we come up a little bit.
That's how you learn the legal field.
That's right. right. Well, we're going to discuss today the Murdaugh case because no one's really covered that case very much in the media, and we thought that we would
some different perspectives.
Yeah, a different perspective than what you've heard on the 95 channels that have covered. Oh, Reid is decided.
I didn't know if it would
introduce.
shook up. So if you do this, it'll take the.
This looks like a new design on the can, or maybe it's just I never drink this, so I just don't know.
Well, you're in for a treat.
Do you have any lime?
Shall we?
I guess,
don't ruin it.
For those of y'all that are aware, this is Friday, and we celebrate a good work week by having a cold one.
And this one's Chace's favorite, the Bud Light Special.
All right, a special request. I said, please.
Please. Cheers.
Bring an 82.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Just kidding.
Yeah.
They're good.
Wow.
I'm getting a little bit of bath water.
Well, I mean, you would
fresh
know.
cut grass,
You would know.
Fresh cut grass. Rubber hose.
Yeah.
College poor decisions.
Well, Alex Murdaugh is in jail and is going to stay there for quite some time. Have you guys been following the case at all?
Have I been following it?
Actually, I don't know if I could go home tonight if I told her that we had a podcast and we talked about the Alex Murdaugh trial.
Sure.
Without her here.
Yep, I understand.
She has been watching every single clip of it, every single YouTube video, every special coverage.
I am one clip away from being a lawyer myself.
I figured.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I'm just saying. And
hopefully you don't turn out to be as good as the Alec, his defense team was, because those lawyers were, maybe out of their depth.
Well, I think
they're civil attorneys doing a criminal case. They're just they're out of their depth.
Well, I think they're good, competent professionals, and they had a very
they can come after me. I don't care. They had a tough thing. They did terrible.
But they
for being a criminal defense attorney, they made terrible mistakes.
Well, they fought very hard for their client, and
so did Rudy. But
well, they had a very difficult case, to say the least, because of all the stuff that was in the media with Alex Murdaugh. But just to start off with, did what happened happen? You guys, did y'all think he was going to be found guilty?
Yeah, I thought he was. I mean, the first day of trial, some of my friends texted me, and I said, "Oh yeah, he's already lost." Yeah, I mean, his credibility was just shot to hell.
Yeah,
I mean, you lose credibility on day one. Forget it. Just pack it up. Pack it up.
Yeah, and we have this rule about the jury not considering any evidence except for what they hear there in the courtroom, but we're all human beings.
Yeah.
And all that stuff kind of leaks in. You try to do your best, and the judge here, that's the one, I would say the one saving grace in the whole thing. And it's been a little bit of a point of contention in my marriage because Whitney has fallen in love with Judge Clifton Newman. That is her new little her new little.
That was my best Jerry Seinfeld impression. It wasn't very good. It wasn't very good.
Pretty good. Yeah, but he is basically, if you can think of the opposite of Newman from Seinfeld.
Right.
A suave, sophisticated, intelligent, cold, calm,
charismatic.
Yeah.
I'm having T-shirts made, and there's a fan club that meets once a week.
Right.
What's it called?
The I Love Judge Newman. Yeah, not very original.
Yeah.
With these,
I thought that with your charity you might go Newman's Knockers. or something to that effect with the booby
We're
queen.
changing it right now.
Yeah. So for those
Let me edit the design of the T-shirt.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, my wife runs a nonprofit called the Booby Queen Company, where she helps women that are going through breast cancer, and so that's where Reid's incredible joke came from.
That is Newman Knockers. I like it. Do y'all's friends call you when big cases like this happen, like, and say, "Hey, what do you think? What is your take?"
I mean, really, I think that there's only so much time in the day, and we work hard, and then we go home, and our wives just have a lot of questions.
That's typically it.
That's a lot of questions, and that's pretty much a full day.
It's not your friends; it's your wife.
It's pretty much a full day. Full day.
Yeah.
I didn't ask you too many questions about this, did I?
Love a Pete, yeah.
Well, it was necessary.
I know, but like for me, like Reid, I was on the side of the guy's going to jail.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically forever, because I had already I was interested in it to start out with, but after I had gotten about, maybe 20 minutes into the evidence in the case,
yep.
I was like, okay, all right, so if this jury is not, if they're sharp at all, they're going to...
Or just if they're just not corrupt at this point, because there's a lot of corruption, obviously, in the whole system in that area.
As this trial actually showed, it was that part was very unfortunate. But what I was very, very impressed with and proud of is the process. You didn't see any sort of circus antics, any ridiculous stuff occur in the trial, aside from the bomb scare. Right, but the way Judge Clifton Newman handled everything, I thought was incredible. He did an amazing job handling that, and I thought that the prosecution did a pretty good job. I was questioning some of the stuff that they were doing, the way they were cross-examining and everything, but in interviews after, I've seen that he had a strategy to allow Alex to talk, and Alex kind of sort of hung himself. But I think it's hard to find any sort of like silver lining in this whole thing, but one, the South Carolina judicial system kind of shown in this thing a little bit. We got, what did you say, Newman's knockers out of it?
Right.
Yeah, a bunch of fans of Clifton Newman. But the online sleuths, the people out there that were actually interested in this and actually creating like content, trying to figure stuff out on their own, I mean, I'm ready to hire half these people. I found this one girl online, and I can
3D reenactments.
Yeah.
Really good.
This girl did a great job, and if I ever have the opportunity to or the need to have anything like this done, definitely reaching out to her, because she did an excellent job and helped me.
Shout her out.
So I'm gonna put that in the description. I can't pronounce it because it's kind of an odd whatever No, it's like AVERTG something. I don't know. But go ahead if you would. Do you want to go ahead and pull up the first clip here, because this was a thing that really convinced me. It was about the 911 call.
Yeah, that was bad.
And they were able to actually determine when he put the car in shift, and then figure out how long it took him after he put the car into park, shifted into park, right? It took him to make the phone call. It took him 20 seconds, right? But then he gave all this testimony that explained that he had gone over to the bodies, that he had checked for pulse, that he'd gone to Paul, that he whatever. And what she does here is create a 3D reenactment that shows you that a person can't do this. She had a friend go and kind of try and cover the same ground, park the car, get out, and do all the same things. And she shows here that it takes longer than that to actually know what had happened. And if I'm a person coming upon this and my wife's dead on the ground, my son's dead on the ground, it's going to take me a lot longer than that.
I can do it in 20 seconds.
Yeah,
I got good foot speed. Let's go.
Let's
He's from
see what she did here. What is her at?
Yeah, what's her 40? That's what I want to know.
AZGET. She's a student, I think.
I need to know her 40 time. If she's reenacting.
Hey guys, this is a short illustration of the 20 seconds that everyone's talking about, where Paul gets out of his vehicle and calls 911, and it just seems a little too impossible.
In that situation, she had paid somebody to actually drive up, do everything that Alex actually described that he did to the police after they arrived and was telling what had happened. and had somebody go through and just try to do it as fast as they could. And it took them another 10 seconds to actually, be able to actually get back to the car where he said he made the call from. And so little things like that add up over time, because this was mostly a circumstantial case where they were showing that when they say circumstantial, the difference is like the circumstances indicate that this person is the person that did it versus having a gun with that person's fingerprint on it, right? That's a direct evidence type of thing. And when you have circumstantial evidence, it's much more difficult in a criminal case to prove fault. But it's little things like that add up over time. Because,
if you have that, that doesn't pull much weight for me. It ties a little bit one side, but, if you say I took the pulse of Paul and the wife or whatever, and you ran over to Paul as fast as you can because your adrenaline's running, you see something's wrong. Yeah. You run over there, you see his head's blown off. Yeah. You run to the other one and you check, oh God, then you run back I still think that's possible to do, but it is, 100 of those things. Like you can get past 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, but there's 100 of those things. And that's what the prosecution had to do, and that's why the case was long. Yeah. If you have direct evidence, usually a case is quick, and that's what they screwed up in the OJ trial. Yeah. They had direct evidence, and they treated it like they had, had to prove every single little thing that ever existed. And so I think the prosecution only had that choice, but there wasn't a smoking gun to speak.
Yeah, I would say that for me, that was important to me to a degree because of the way he described what he did. Right. Just because, if I'm coming upon that scene, he said he went over to his son, who no longer had a head, right, and checked his pulse, and then asked the police once they arrived there, "Are they dead?" That's all. Sure. I'm not saying I would act normal. To me, that's odd behavior.
That's more damning than. But I still, if that's the only thing, you still go to me. It goes to excited utterance, which is the exception of the hearsay and all that. But you say things when you're in distress that aren't always accurate. Right. It's been proven time and time again that, and there's a lot of fight on that. Exception to the hearsay rules because of that, because it's not always accurate when you have an excited utterance. Like, oh shit, hey, what did I do? You might not have done anything. You might just be freaking out or panicking or whatever. But I think it's a combination of all the stuff.
Sure. Reid just said hearsay, and for those of you that don't know, basically that means it's an out-of-court statement. So it's a statement made without you making any oath, so there's no penalty for you to kind of lie under the circumstances. And so the court doesn't really feel like that has the level of evidence or indicia, what's called indicia of reliability, that's required to actually be presented as evidence in court.
What does indicia mean?
Indicia.
God, you are just so sexy right now.
I tried to say it as country as I could and mess it up.
Just so cute when you talk like this.
A tendency to be true. Yeah, it's more likely that it's true than it's not.
Call it,
right? Yeah.
Readist.
Okay, perfect.
So with the kennel video, then would that be an example of direct?
Well, I'll say this. No, kind of, yes, because but it did place him in the time. But that's a circumstantial issue,
right? It's a circumstantial issue, but it is
very, very damning.
It's still circumstantial in the fact that he's not seen, and you have to recognize his voice with people that have to testify that sounds like him.
Yeah, eight people that said it's 100%.
Sure, but they still have to.
But it's still considered circumstantial and not.
That's kind of like half and half, I think.
And it's funny if I were,
because the video's real, but you have to identify the person. Yeah,
there was something that happened that was mentioned after this, and if I were a juror, I would have noticed this. Randy, his brother. He showed up to every single day of trial until the day of trial that Alex, after Alex admitted that he was down in the kennel and that he had lied about it, he never showed up to another day.
That would have, and jurors notice stuff like that.
Yeah, how the courtroom
because they're looking for expressions on people's faces, and like you said earlier, they're not supposed to look at anything else except the evidence and all that. But everybody's human, and so they're looking at reactions and what's the older son? I don't know. What's his name? Buster Binger. I don't know. Whatever it is. Buster. You know,
they didn't do the South any favors with the whole nickname thing, Paw and Mags.
Exactly.
For the love of Pete.
Buster.
For the love of Pete. You just dug yourself away.
I'll take that over Paw and Boop Boop.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is ridiculous. But just saying, his facial responses were not good.
No.
And you know, a party that is supporting you, that is a witness and has not been driven out by the rule, and is there all the time, a juror is going to notice that they're not there.
Yeah.
And it may be he had something going on, but they're going to associate that with whatever. Well,
no
something
support.
happened.
Yeah.
Something happened.
Yeah.
Something happened.
Yeah. And it was a big deal for him to actually admit he was there, because it wasn't until trial that thing that he actually admitted that he was there for the first time, that he had lied about the whole thing. So I think that when he admitted that, he might as well not have said anything else.
Right. Yep. And that's why I think the defense did what they did with all the financial crimes and everything else. They had no choice. But once you lose, like I said at the start, I mean, once you lose that credibility, you're shot. And the only shot they had is to put him up on Alec on the stand and try to regain some of that and hope that the jurors would accept what he was saying and say, "Oh, I'm falling on the sword." But I did all these things, but I didn't do this.
Sure.
But nobody believes that, and it creates a situation where you say, as a juror, it's not legal, but the jurors can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And they go, "I don't care anymore. I don't care if it's. I don't know for certain that you pulled the trigger." But you're involved somehow. So, you know, that's it.
Right. They're there to try and make sure justice is done. And that's part of the reason why it's left to people. Somebody at some point is going to have to make that hard, difficult decision and take in whatever's there, whatever evidence is there that we can find that is most credible and that is allowed in under our rules, and then make a decision. And I think they did a good job. But you talked a little bit about like his facial expressions. Multiple jurors have been interviewed, and all of them said that they did not feel like him crying was sincere, that they didn't see really any tears, that it was him wiping his nose and basically play acting at crying. I don't know how that's possible, even if you did do all this stuff.
Know, if you go through withdrawals on perks, your nose runs. I mean, everybody knows that.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah. Well, Whitney, did you think that he was guilty?
Yes.
Or that he would be found guilty? How about that?
Yes. Here's the thing. I'm not so sure if he pulled the trigger.
Did you care?
No.
That's the juror's mentality. I'm telling you.
And I know you're not supposed to bring in other cases or other crimes or whatever that he was involved in this one, but looking at the pattern of those things and then looking at his pattern of behavior in this.
Well, that's a good point. So there's another exception, Chace. Talk about that. If you're different arrests, some can be entered, some cannot.
Well, this gets into what they call character evidence, and typically you're not allowed to introduce bad character as evidence in the case that you acted in that way this time. So, for instance, if you're a bank robber and you robbed banks 20 years ago, right? And then you're being charged and prosecuted for robbing a bank here, they should prove that you robbed this bank, right? And the only way that the court right now will allow evidence to come in that you actually robbed these other banks is if it happened recently, within the last 10 years, because that affects whether or not, you're somebody that's willing to rob banks. You don't have a problem lying under oath, right? But if it happened so long ago, past 10 years, okay, they're looking for some motive that you might have had to rob that bank, or almost like a signature of behavior where, let's say, for instance, you rob a bank, and is this the best example of this ever? Is Home Alone, one of your favorite videos. What did the Home Alone burglars call themselves? Do you remember?
The wet bandits.
The wet bandits, because they turned the water on and they let that, right. So evidence of them of all these other crimes where they had always turned on the water is allowed because it becomes almost like a signature. And in this case, he created a signature of betraying oaths. So his oath as an officer of the court to be honest and to represent his clients and to zealously pursue their interests, and then he robbed his clients. He just over and over again, in intimate, very, very sort of sacred and oaths, he betrayed over and over again. And so that's why I said, like, I don't know. I think his credibility was shot as soon as they let that evidence in about the financial crimes.
They I think that to not boost your love affair, but I think the judge made the correct call on that.
100%.
And there's also, in civil stuff and criminal stuff, there's certain, this case is set aside, but you have certain crimes that are allowed to bring in or not. And most of it, if you can go through the whole list, but it's really based on truthfulness. Mm-hmm. Like if the crime is a crime of like lying, then it can be brought in, right. and you can talk about it. If it's a crime of fraud, all that stuff, you come in. But if it's, it can be even something violent. Yeah. But if it's not showing that you're lying, then that you don't really get to bring that in.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So when you say bring it in, you're saying
to the new trial, to the new charge,
right?
And
so
to bring it in as evidence,
because they talked a lot about his financial issues,
and because that's a crime of deception.
People.
Right.
A crime of deception.
And so Judge Newman allowed that in, meaning that can be discussed and questioned and all of that during the trial, right. Whereas some of these other things like
even some crimes that are more heinous may not be allowed in because it's not relevant to the situation. It doesn't go to, is this person talking about the truth of the matter?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have certain crimes, like Chace was talking about the bank robbery, that's a deception type crime. Mm-hmm. Where more violent crimes sometimes don't have any kind of deception. They're just violent, terrible crimes.
I get in bar fights all the time. That means I lie under oath.
Right.
I get mad and I blow my top when I have too much to drink.
Right.
That doesn't mean that I'm a liar. Mm-hmm. It means that I can't control myself and have impulse control issues. But
and for legal purposes, this is a hypothetical, Chace.
Yeah.
This is
right?
not you.
No.
So. You're not in bar fights, right? Yeah.
No.
So we need to have a talk.
No.
This is an intervention.
I plead the fifth. No, so Whitney, you had a lot of questions at home, and I tried to answer those. Are there still any sort of lingering questions out there that you might have about what you saw that sort of stick out for you?
Lingering questions
of things that maybe. How about this? Do you have things that you've listened to on podcasts, seen on clips on TikTok that you go, why didn't they talk about that? Or maybe something that you go, how did that get in? Anything like that?
Well, the housekeeper, the death of the housekeeper.
Case, yep.
Yeah. Now, the financial stuff,
right,
with that was discussed.
Yes,
but not the
act itself.
The act itself.
Yeah, sure.
And so that is another example of like them filtering. I get the judge filtering of what can go in and what cannot go in.
Right.
But it's really hard to talk about the financial stuff without talking about her dying and how she died and all that kind of stuff.
And I will say this, Chace, I know you got. I want you to elaborate on it, but that's one thing the prosecution did really well is that it's very difficult as an attorney. I was going to say a lawyer, but
that's not his first Bud Light.
Yeah, you talking about today or? But it's very difficult when you have these. All right, so you go into. And we've talked a little bit about this, and we talk a lot about it at the offices. So you go into a case. And these are your parameters. Your parameters are from 1 to 100 for folks just listening. And in the visual realm, it's this wide. And then the judge says your parameters are here. They're from 20 to 75.
Yeah.
And so, but you've prepared questions. You've thought about the case, sat up at night, thought, your head's running through this case over and over and over and over and over again. It's very difficult to go, okay, let me cut that piece out while I'm cross-examining someone on the issue I know so much about, and I know you're lying, and I can prove it, but this is not the time or place.
I want to bring up 82 so bad. Backhand.
And so and it's very difficult, and a lot of people, especially prosecutors, have not a problem with it, but they make that mistake, and then if you do that, then it's a mistrial, or you leave an appealable issue, a glaring appealable issue, if it's not ruled a mistrial. So I thought the prosecution did an excellent job of, okay, well, here's the new rules. These were the old rules, 1 to 100. Now the new rules are 25 to 75. And they stayed within the rules that the judge allowed them to be in.
Right, and he's talking about that because he's talking about the financial crimes. So, like, initially the judge ruled in that case that they weren't allowed to talk about the financial crimes. Okay, they weren't allowed to talk about a lot of the issues like the roadside shooting and stuff like that, right? But things can happen at trial that witnesses will actually bring out that now make the other issues actually admissible because a witness brought it into question. For instance, I can't remember which witness it was.
1 second. It's called opening the door, and that's why it's very, very difficult when you put a witness up there because we're trained in it. But if I put you up there, you're going to say something about, well, how the hell did the housekeeper get knocked down the stairs?
I would totally ruin everybody's case. Like, I would totally ruin it because I would just talk, and then all kinds of things would be able to come in.
It's like trying to play a basketball game and you don't know the rules to the game. So it's just like, all right, so what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to get the ball and throw it in there? Okay. Well, he's dribbling it, and you just walk over and push him and take it, and you're like, oh, you can't do that. Right? Now he's at the free throw line scoring points on us, And that's what happened, essentially, is I think it was the mother-in-law that opened the door to all that stuff, and that's when all the financial crimes came in, and that's when, the fact that the prosecution wanted to go into that, was prepared to go into that, and was ready in case they knew what the judge's ruling was that they couldn't. Okay, but still they were prepared and ready to go into it if something like this happened, and it did happen, and they were ready to sort of exploit that. They had witnesses ready.
I think if that didn't happen, I believe he's guilty, but I truly believe that he would have been found not guilty because I don't think there was enough circumstantial evidence with outside of showing the pattern of behavior that somebody would. I'll take that back. I don't think it would have been a not guilty. I think it would have been a hung jury.
Yeah, maybe.
I think it would have been a hung jury. But with all the history, because if you think about it, if that wouldn't have come in, he wouldn't have testified. He wouldn't have needed to testify.
Yeah.
He could have been silent. There wasn't any hard evidence outside the video, and you can explain that away, and you can explain the 20 seconds away a little bit here and there. There's a couple things you can explain away. But when you have this cloud over you of just a multitude of lying, then you can't explain that away anymore. So,
you can't explain it because your explanation means nothing.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's like if everything is, if it's quacking like a duck, walking like a duck, swimming like a duck,
I use that in the brief, and judges didn't like it, but it's fine.
Even here, they didn't like
it? No,
I
think Judge Blanchard actually laughed at it. So.
Good.
Oh, is this Reed Sanders? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's from Thompson. It's fine.
Love you, Judge Blanchard. Thank you.
Thank you.
He swore me in.
Yeah. Good man.
So there were a couple of other stars. I want to move on real quick. We're going to skip a couple of the videos here. Let's go right now to the clip of just how she proposed the actual shooting occurred, because I thought it was much more plausible than the way in which the prosecution actually went over it. They actually gave examples, but the 3D models were, I thought, much more convincing as, like, this is what would happen in a situation where things didn't work out the way they planned.
This is a 3D model of the Murdaugh crime. This illustration will show you how each person was shot. If you like my work, give me a follow. Paul was in a dog kennel taking a video that ended at 8:46. A few minutes later, he was walking to the feed room. He's texting a friend and reads his last text at 8:48:59. Seconds later, the first shot is fired. At 8:49:01, his phone is forever locked and never used again. Blood drips from Paul's left arm as he staggers to the door. The gunman, thinking he had killed Paul with the first shot, goes to get his other weapon, but is shocked when he senses Paul by the door. A second earlier, Maggie at 8:49 reads her last text and is interrupted by the sound of gunfire. She turns to run back. The gunman grabs his gun and runs towards Maggie. As she approaches, she sees Paul on the ground, but the gunman stops her. Let's rewind this so we can see the pathologist's report. Now let's circle around and see the path of the bullets. Here we see the two entrant wounds, one here and another here. Circling around to the back, we can see those exit wounds. Now we can see those wounds, one here and the other here. Continuing on to the last illustration, we can see how she was shot in an upward direction, the bullet going through her breast and into the head, as noted in the diagram.
And for the folks at home, y'all can watch our other clips, and there are a lot of speculation. I can make up stories too. It's fine.
No, so what I'll say is that we're going to produce a separate video where you can watch all these videos that I propose you watch in full, okay, with my commentary, without these two monkeys around.
Well, I mean, you have fun with your 4
We have
hour.
short attention spans, Chace, and we just want to get to the meat of the stuff. We don't need to nerd out.
Look here, I'm not trying to talk to the shorter attention span people. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to talk to you.
We got things to do.
Yeah, I'm talking about the serious people that are going to keep your lights on, make sure you have health care and stuff like that. Yeah.
I feel like that was a dig.
Oh, wow, you're very perceptive.
Astute.
Yeah. Well, so when it comes to the Murdaugh case, what did you sort of like get out of it? What was your general overall impression as a layman, Whitney?
As a laywoman, it was very interesting to see the power dynamic that the family has in that town, for one. And it's a small town. It's, small population, and they have a lot of pull. And there's a lot of what I guess you would call a good old boy system going on.
Well, I agree, and I think that the perception of how much that happens is way higher than it does. Our world has changed. Small town. I'm from a small town. No way that would happen in my small town. Those places only exist in a tiny little fraction. And because we see it on television, we think it happens everywhere, and it just does not. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the Murdaughs are terrible humans. I think their whole clan, just they've been doing this shit for years. I mean, it's pathetic, and I don't like it. And I'm glad, to steal Samuel L. Jackson, I hope he burns in hell. But my point is, it just doesn't happen that much anymore, and the reason is because we are more connected through the internet, through the big advances in society have been through communication. Screens. There's no, we're not the Jetsons, but the last 30, 40 years have been screens and how to communicate with people. These little things, these little pockets of terribleness don't exist that much anymore. And I'm glad another one's extinguished.
That's a good point. And I think one of the people that actually helped that occur was somebody I've tried, I've had cases against, and it was interesting to see them actually on TV and actually being exactly who they are on TV versus who they are in real person or real life. But that was Mark Tinsley, and he gave the actual prosecution a law school lesson about cross-examination, and that is that you don't ask a question that you don't know the answer to.
I mean, that's rule number one.
Oh my goodness! So in this situation, Mark Tinsley was suing Alex Murdaugh and Paul for the boat case in which the young woman died, and he had basically moved to have all of the financial information about Alex Murdaugh disclosed to him. And the jury the judge had given him a hearing, and he had gotten it, right? Well, the prosecution and the defense in there, handling all of, the difficult things they had to handle in that case, overlooked that a little bit. Mm-hmm. And, Mark knew exactly where they were going, right? And that because of what he does in the video, but it was one of, some of the most, fun for a lawyer TV to watch when it comes to court TV. So if you could play the part with Mark Tinsley being interviewed.
He ultimately agreed to give it to me.
He agreed to give it to you?
Sure.
But I thought the hearing didn't happen.
Well, you thought wrong. There's a lot of papers, so maybe you got confused.
He granted this motion?
I think so. You want to see the order?
Yes.
Oh, pull it out! Blam! Let's go, baby.
It's the record.
I hope he's right for his
October 7th, 2021.
Woo!
That's embarrassing.
Oh,
That's embarrassing.
Yeah, that is what you call a rough. You can stop right there. That's what you call a rough day at the office. Yeah.
And not to, just kill the point so much, but that goes to the credibility, because now they don't trust the lawyer.
Yeah.
You
didn't know that?
You didn't. Why don't you know that?
Yeah.
And it might not have been his fault. I'm not saying that, but you've already lost credibility with Alec.
Yeah.
Now, the attorney that's representing Alec has lost credibility for not. I mean, you can't challenge somebody on something and challenge them that way
and not know the answer.
It's just insanity. It's insanity.
And you want to. So Mark is a sharp guy, and he knew what line of question or what topics he was going to be asked questions about. He knew the angles in which he would take in order to try and defend this person. And he knew that guy was going to ask this question. So much so that he printed out, made a copy of the judge's order, and was waiting. Let me tell you, there's an inner child inside of Mark Tinsley that was jumping up and down.
I guarantee
when he
you.
said,
he's going to be on the back of my t-shirt. Judging on the front.
He was so excited.
No, we got to get a nickname for his groupies now.
Yeah. I'm sure they're already out there.
Yeah.
But his I guess Riz, as the kids say today.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah. It's a short for charisma, Reid.
Don't have it.
Wow.
So was further on display when he was later questioned outside the courtroom. If you could, Genuine, pull that clip up for me. I thought this was funny.
It was a lot of good characters in this. That was what made the national media and everybody jump
you had
on
a
it.
really good villain.
You had all kind of stuff.
Everything. Yeah, innocent victim.
Reba McEntire saying, what was it? Don't trust the Southern lawyer in Columbia the day after the verdict.
Oof.
The verdict and the sentencing today.
I probably share the sentiment of Judge Newman in terms of I think it was an appropriate death penalty case. I think that even life without parole is probably too good for what he did. Obviously relieved with the verdict, I think that living in prison, gambling, meat sticks on football games is too good for him.
Meat sticks.
All right, so,
I don't know how to define meat stick, but
So the reason why he referenced meat sticks was because he was having a conversation with his son Buster, and he was bragging about winning some sort of college football gambling thing that he had with some other fellow prisoners.
Right.
Over like snacks.
Well, that shows you the arrogance of this human,
or self-absorption.
That it was such a pattern. We've talked about that of deception and getting away with just. I mean, murder, over and over again, if you want to really say it. But after you do something and you get away with it over and over again, then you're not that. He was concerned, but he just assumed it was going to work out like they all do.
Always done.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're gambling in prison, it'd be jail at that time, headed to prison. Prison's going to be a new adventure for him. And I'm glad he didn't get the death penalty, because he'll have a great time. He'll have a great time.
That's maybe another topic for another time,
Sure.
whether it's worse to, be in an American prison for the rest of your life or to actually get the death penalty. But
wait, I have a question.
Oh
Yes,
my goodness,
this is what we need.
Yes.
I do have a question.
Yeah,
so
bring it.
you guys were talking earlier about the jurors and about how, they're not supposed to read things, watch things, talk about the case, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, this is 2023.
How you going to prove it?
No, what's your question?
Yeah.
Finish it.
Well, the question
Sorry.
the question is, how do you guys as lawyers foresee how the court system is going to handle filtering out, eliminating access to jurors,
Sure.
for social media, for
Sure.
whatever? Do we need to lock them in a room for 6 weeks?
Oh, that's interesting.
Like-
Interesting.
That's
That is,
so very interesting.
I mean, honestly, because
Yeah.
you can't. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. I mean, and everyone out there, you can just go ahead and say, yeah, Miss O'Connor, she cannot be in
This
this.
is
juror.
it,
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah.
Because I will be watching
I know.
stuff. I will be looking up stuff. I will be whatever.
Googling.
Because I'm
and-
nosy and all those
Yeah.
things. But I'm sure I'm not the only one out there.
No.
So how do y'all foresee that evolving?
Do you,
you want to start?
Go
or
ahead,
want
you
me
go-
to?
you go ahead.
All right. Well, I think it's really not going to evolve. We've talked about this a lot. The lawmakers are always and will forever be behind technology. So, as trial attorneys, you have to plan for it. And anything that you go to, any training that you go to that's above law school, when we do continuing legal education, to be a trial lawyer is to shorten it. Shorten everything. You have to shorten it because people don't have the attention span. And if you give time and days and months and weeks or whatever, they're going to look up things.
Yeah.
And you have to anticipate that. And that's part of what I was talking about earlier about the 1 to 100. You still have to play the game from 1 to 100, even though the judge has said 25
Narrative.
to 75, right? You still have to kind of hint at the other things because you know that the jurors they're people. They're going to look. They're,
Sure.
Curiosity killed the cat, and it's just human nature. Everybody wants to know. The reason this thing is successful and took off in the public eye is because it's interesting, right? And so people want to know. So you have to plan for that as an attorney to go, all right, even though they're not supposed to evaluate this aspect, we have to decide how we want to handle that because it's still going to be a factor.
You see, you address that as a trial lawyer, and I respect that. I appreciate that. I want that as your partner, right?
I appreciate that, Chace.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, but the way you approached it was you were trying to think about how to do justice in every case. You were thinking about it the way a judge would, how to actually control what the jury actually considers when they're deciding a case. Okay, and we have a word for that, and it's called sequestration. Okay, we can do it with witnesses. We can do it with jurors as well. We can do a lot to limit to what the jurors actually interact with. We can restrict newspapers. Okay, we can take away their cell phones. A lot of that stuff in order to make sure
Like take away their cell phone for the whole case?
100%.
When I said earlier, I said invoke the rule. That's what I meant. I should have elaborated. But that's invoke the rule. And, and we were talking about the brother, I believe, when he was gone. If prosecution had invoked the rule to start, he would have never been allowed in the courtroom except when he testified.
Because
he was a witness. And so that's, I thought it was very shrewd of the prosecution to not invoke the rule.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So sequestration is basically that. That's the word for the court's attempt and the rules of evidence's attempt to actually really, really constrict and control what happens. This is why I wish that we could have some sort of TV show, podcast, that are constrained by the rules of evidence that actually discuss the issues that affect us every day. Because if we're talking about climate change, okay, we're talking about whether or not,
COVID, anything,
all that, right?
Any
yeah,
popular,
exactly
stuff that's going on in our world,
right? Whether that stuff is true or not, if it was actually subjected to the rules of evidence, right, it would change what you're actually allowed to hear, and significantly, not a little bit, but incredibly, and when we're making decisions that affect our own lives, I mean, we're talking about Alex's life, Murdaugh's life, and anyone human.
You Freudian slip said Murdaugh.
Murdaugh.
Alex Murdaugh. Life.
That was a unfortunate, little slip of the tongue, I guess, or his name. My gosh, yeah, it sounds like he's a murderer. But I forgot my train of thought. For the love of God, Reid.
If you could do that with the news that comes in of all of our topics that are important to us, that's where you were going.
Yeah. So if you could actually control that stuff, I think we could actually make some good decisions when it comes to public policy, when it comes to which politicians to actually vote for, and whether or not they're, toeing a line for a particular special interest group, or whether or not they're actually looking at a science and trying to do what they feel is morally right for the whole. But anyway, this is part of the reason why I'm so passionate about the law. While we're so passionate about the law, is that it is an ideal that you strive to. It is an idea of, like, when you have a serious issue, what are you allowed to consider in actually deciding that? Because it really, really matters. Yep. What comes out of this deliberation, what comes out of this, review of the evidence. And I think it's one of the most interesting and best endeavors that the people have made to actually try to come to some sort of agreement about what truth is, and to actually do what's right in any given situation for the whole. So this trial was interesting in a lot of different ways. It was very, very sad in a lot of different ways, but it was also a very great example of, the human endeavor to get to the bottom of something and actually put the person in jail that was responsible for it, make them pay, do some sort of justice, and then move on as a society, and have everyone believe that after that the justice was done and we can move on. It's super important, incredibly important in people's lives, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
Gosh.
Yeah.
That was the sexiest thing,
girl,
you have ever said. Reid? Can you give us a minute?
Yeah. Reid, we're not going to make it. Thank y'all very much for joining us. We're going to go make out in the next room. We'll see you next time on Layman's Law. I've done some epic impressions of him. They're incredible. My name is Alex. I know it sounds like Alec, but it's Alex. Alex. You see, I don't remember shooting my wife because I was taking the Perkies. Y'all know Perkies?
That's good.